As you know, we've been spending a lot of time this year looking at immigration, going back to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, to literacy laws, to the quota system of the 1920s. I think we could answer this question: does the United States have a fair and effective immigration policy? As no. Let's take a look at some of the more recent changes. So, as Representative Philip Burton says, just as we sought to eliminate discrimination in our land through the Civil Rights Act, today we seek to phase out the national origins quota system to eliminate discrimination in immigration to this nation composed of descendants of immigrants. So it's a lot of big words, but the quota system, going back to the 1920s, of favoring people that were already here needed to be changed. And here's where we saw it. The law set the quotas at 2% of each national group represented in the 1890 census. So if you remember, that favored people from Northern and Western Europeans, essentially white Anglo-Saxon Protestants with a few Catholics thrown in. In 1965, the Immigration Act abolished this. And what came out of this was something known as migration chains. People would come here, get their citizenship, and then send for their family members. This was not uncommon that you would end up with aunts, uncles, grandparents, all being sponsored by the original immigrant, who would then get their green card and hopefully eventually citizenship. The other group that was favored as a result of this law in 1965 were refugees. If you could establish that you were leaving your country because of persecution, race, religion, nationality, if you were gay and would be persecuted in your country, or you were of a outspoken politician who is now out of favor, you might get favored status to be allowed in the United States. In 1986, a law was passed because of an increase in illegal immigration, and this established penalties to employers who knowingly hired unauthorized immigrants. So it was believed back in 1986 that the best way to eliminate this was to go after the jobs. If people would not hire illegal immigrants, then illegal immigrants would not come. That turned out to be a miscalculation. So as a result of this law of 1996, we hired Border Patrol agents along the 14-mile border in San Diego to try to keep out some Mexicans. If you wanted to sponsor a relative to come, you had to demonstrate that you could take care of them and that your income was above poverty level. Greater penalties were put into place for people who are smuggling illegal people, documents, etc., into the country. And if you look at this map, most of the states have unauthorized immigrants are, of course, along the southern border. So when did things get tighter for illegal immigrants? After 9/11, as part of the U.S. Patriot Act, the Department of Homeland Security was put in charge of controlling illegal immigration. And the number of Border Patrol agents were tripled. President Trump was elected in 2016, and one of his big messages and promises that he would build a wall and that Mexico would pay for it. Today, as we know, he is slowly building that wall, and the American taxpayer is paying for it. Look at this photo here from 2006. It shows local people building a fence on private property to try and keep out immigrants. Why are immigrants so disliked? Many people make the distinction between legal and illegal immigrants, but for many it comes down to they're taking our jobs, which, as we've discussed in class, is not often the case. They are certainly filling up spaces in hospitals and public schools, and many people feel that we are crowded enough already. There is the Dreamers Act, which President Obama put into as an executive action during his presidency, which gave sanctuary, I guess, to children who are brought here, or grown children who are brought here by their parents illegally, but have established themselves as, hardworking students and workers and have only known the United States as their home and they wish to stay. And that is very much an issue in the current administration of whether or not to throw the Dreamers back or to let them stay. So immigration is one of those issues that nobody will ever get complete agreement on. Look at this chart. The number of apprehensions on the border in 2019. The numbers have greatly gone up this last year. If you look at the peak, May of 2019, there were 122,000 apprehensions. And if you notice, families are beginning to come in greater numbers than individuals. And that's where we've seen a lot of those pictures of children being separated from their parents and placed in, for lack of a better word, cages. COVID-19 has been rampant in these shelters, and many children get put into foster care or in some cases adopted and permanently separated from their parents. So many people find this an incredibly difficult situation and feel like more should be done to keep people from coming here or to take care of them once they get here.